Hello, and welcome to episode 206 of Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we visit with the author, Jacquelyn Mitchard. Enjoy!
I'm Ann Dark.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
The Good Son by Jacquelyn Mitchard was published by MIRA on January 28th. What do you do when the person you love most becomes unrecognizable to you? For Thea Demetriou, the answer is both simple and agonizing. You keep loving him somehow. Stefan was just 17 when he went to prison for his drug-fueled murder of his girlfriend, Belinda. 3 years later, he's released to a world that refuses to let him move on. Belinda's mother, once Thea's good friend, galvanizes the community to rally against him to protest in her daughter's memory. The media paints Stefan as a symbol of white privilege and indifferent justice systems. Neighbors, employers, even members of Thea's own family turn away. Meanwhile, Thea struggles to understand her son. At times, he's still the sweet boy he always was. And others, he's a young man tormented by guilt and almost broken by his time in prison. But his efforts to make amends meet escalating resistance and threats. Thea suspects more forces are at play than just community outrage. If there's so much she never knew about her own son, what other secrets has she yet to uncover? Especially about the night Belinda died. We would like to welcome to the program Jacquelyn Mitchard. She has a wonderful book out called The Good Son. Welcome, Jacquelyn.
Thank you for having me on this dark and stormy night.
Yes, yes it is.
Well, Jacquelyn, I am just so curious about the origin of this story. Is it based on a story that you knew, or is this all in your imagination?
It's an interesting origin. It's based entirely on a true story told to me by the person it actually happened to, but I don't know who she is. I was waiting for my coffee at a big writers' conference several years ago. There was a woman in front of me who dropped her book on the ground, and I picked it up and handed it back to her, and I said, "Are you here for the writers' conference?" Because she was carrying a book. And she said, "No, she was here to visit her son who was in a nearby prison, and that she came every weekend to visit him, and he would be in prison for a very long time." Oh, I did not want to hear. She told me next. She said that he had killed the only girl he ever loved. And he was so strung out on drugs at the time that he had no memory at all of the incident. They had been sweethearts since they were in the 7th grade. He was only 19, and he would be in prison for a very long time. And she also said, and this shows up not in this way, but shows up in the novel in a sense, that she went to the cemetery to put roses on the girl's grave, and the girl's mother showed up. The boy's mother was terrified, of course. They had been neighbors at one time, and they ended up crying in each other's arms, and the girl's mother said, you're the lucky one because at least you can still touch him, even if you have to live with what he did.
My takeaway from this book was it would have made a great Shakespearean tragedy. This whole story is so tragic from start to finish.
It is. You don't really know how it's going to come out until the end. You don't really know what happened, if you will, the truth of what happened. But there is nobody who comes out of it unscathed.
Right.
For our listeners that have not read the book yet, and please run, don't walk, and grab this book. This book has theme of some abuse, not abuse, but violence towards women.
Right.
I'm sure you had to walk a fine line between his mother professing his innocence and not letting that seem okay.
She never professed his innocence. She just professed her love for him and the obligation she had as his mother to try to help him start over after he came out of prison, after he served time for manslaughter. He was still only not even 21 when he came out of prison because no one else could love him the way she did or at all, it seemed. She had the unenviable task of trying to help him return to the community where he grew up and try to go forward in some way.
Get him accepted back into the community, which would not be easy, I'm sure.
But I thought, Thea, you did such a good job. I have 2 sons myself. I kept putting myself into her role, and I think you really nailed it. There were times she was very upset with him. I can see her journey in this as well, not just his.
Well, she was deeply ambivalent about her son and also didn't know what to expect, didn't know whether she should be fearful of him, didn't know what he had been through in prison, but also she resented the fact that what he was convicted of ended up ruining her life as well. She had a good life. She was a college professor. Her husband was a popular college football coach. They were well accepted and respected in the community, and she was cast into an abyss. And suddenly her colleagues were shunning her, and her boss was telling her it was a good time for her to take her leave of absence or her sabbatical year. This was through nothing she had ever done herself. And yet, of course, when a child does something wrong, the blame or the responsibility is laid at the feet of the parents, and most often the mother, like it or not.
I was stricken by the almost lack of interest of Thea's husband, Stefan's father. He was there, but he wasn't actively helping the situation, I don't think.
It's true that in some key ways, the role of, what do you want to say, the civilizing influence in children's lives often also falls to the mother. I think while Stefan's father really loved him, he didn't quite know what to make of how he was supposed to be with his son. Also, the community was more forgiving of the father than of the mother. The community was more tolerant of the guy who's a football coach and he's everybody's buddy. They were more likely to give him a pass on it.
I took it more as much as fathers are, we'll say, head of the household, mothers are the heart of the house.
Oh,
and
I hear that.
I feel that he was letting Thea lead on that. And he was also trying to keep her from falling apart as well. So he didn't know where his loyalty should lie, his wife or his son, who he had lost a connection with because he had been in prison, and men don't know how to do that.
True. And also, I think it was true that he, while a loving father, he didn't know what to think about his son's guilt. The enormity of that was something that he just couldn't accept. And he had been critical in their growing up years of his relationship with the girl, Belinda, and said that he believe that his son was obsessed with her. I think that that's true. There are many kinds of obsession in this book. The girl's mother being obsessed with revenge or with her own rightness and her own vindication and making Belinda's life and death have counted for something, with her activism against dating violence, which is actually a very important issue and one that's often overlooked. That there are so many different kinds of ways in which people in the story become obsessed that surround this crime. We think of ourselves as a culture that wants to give people a second chance. In reality, people come out of prison, they are the most vulnerable they will ever be to going back to a criminal lifestyle or to taking their own lives.
Well, one of the things, Stefan started his organization to try to make restitution, give others a chance to basically say they were sorry in tangible ways. Is that based on a real group, or is that...
No, I just made it up. But I think
Wow, they ought to
idea.
start a group like that.
I think it's a really good idea. There is a real blueprint. The Forgiveness Project is a real organization and it's worldwide. But the Healing Project that Stefan started was a way in which you didn't have to share forgiveness, but in some way, the person who had done wrong would try to make amends in a meaningful way to the people that he had wronged. Like the one man who had killed a young woman in a drunk driving accident while he was driving drunk, started a college fund for her children when he came out of prison. I just thought, what if that really happened? You know, that would be so interesting.
Yeah, it really would be.
That people were able to or allowed to try to make amends. You can never change the past, of course, and nothing is ever going to be materially different for those people, but the idea of trying to, in some ways, right just a small part of the wrong you've done, it was just very appealing to me.
I thought, boy, if there isn't one, they should start a group like that.
The real story that you base this on, I guess the outcome was not the same for him as in the book.
No. One of the great pleasures of being able to write fiction is that it's fiction.
Yeah.
You can change the way things happened in real life, and you can make a different universe and a different outcome for people. When you change the dynamic of what happened, it changes the whole ripple effect that surrounds the characters. And yes, I do wish, however, I knew that woman. I wish that I could show her the book. I wish that I could tell her what our conversation meant to me, though nothing I could do could ever offer her any solace. I just wish I knew who she was and where she was tonight.
Well, I have to say, this book kept me guessing for quite a while. I went back and forth because when you read a lot of mysteries, you always think there's something hidden somewhere. So I kept thinking, okay, it's this. And, I can't say too much about the ending, but wow, you did a really good job.
Thank you for that. I tried so hard, and I have good teachers. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are terrific mystery writers, like Karen Dion, who wrote The Marsh King's Daughter, and Karen Slaughter. I'm not used to writing a thriller or a mystery, and I thought, I have to be really careful with this. Everybody in that story has a secret. You know, the way that an emotional disorder or an obsession works sometimes is that you tell a story so often you begin to believe it yourself.
All I can say is I want a best friend like Thea had.
Oh, so do I. So do I. Someone like Julie, who is generous and tolerant and kind and funny and also...
And rich.
And rich.
You know what? That was exactly what that book needed too. It's a pretty dark story. And I really enjoyed when he would decorate something with lights and stuff. It just gave such a visual and took you out of the darkness for a little while.
A great friend of mine who is a novelist also, she writes funny novels, but she was dating a guy who did sort of what Stefan does. Like he landscaped places with plants to a degree that it was almost architectural. but he turned out to be nuts in real life. And I just loved the idea of the business so much. I kept saying to my